Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Super Tease video. And in this one, we are going to be predicting which specializations are going to be the strongest given this massive wave of changes that has come crashing in. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news, educational, and entertaining content related to World of Warcraft, smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Okay, let's start chopping away at this Solo Shuffle PvP tier list. Which specializations are going to be the most powerful? This is a prediction. I will then make an updated tier list after seeing the changes and compare them to see how accurate I am. I have done this before, and I want to say that I'm somewhere between 85 to a 90% accuracy with these predictions. So let's go and take a look at this. So Affliction Warlock. This is a specialization that you do not want to write off with this new patch change coming through. They are upping the threshold of how much damage a target can take in fear, and if Affliction Warlocks can have a full row of dots on a healer while they're feared into a corner rotting down, or fearing a DPS and they're stuck in that and it's working almost as a pseudo stun, that is giving Affliction Lock what it didn't have before to really start having a lot of success, which was hard crowd control. So the fear not breaking on damage plus the armor increase to Clothies to make them tankier against the physical classes is going to make them way better for players at the beginning level of the ladder as well as towards the top end, and they were also already just really good into casters, means that Affliction is likely going to be in a really good spot. I'm giving it quite a high ranking because of this in a prediction. Maybe I'm going to come to regret it because Affliction has almost always never been able to hit that top echelon, but I really need to see that threshold of fear damage. That's why this is a prediction. If you full fear a rogue and he's fully dotted and he sits that full fear, like there's no way. Affliction will definitely feel good if that's going to be the case. Arcane, definitely feeling the benefits of the armor buff, specifically against things like hunters that were one of the things that would challenge it, especially in Solo Shuffle. It still has the highest mobility of any mage spec. Still not super beginner friendly. Again, this is from the approach of you have mastered the specialization. This is how powerful it's likely going to feel. I'll leave some comments as to whether or not it's beginner friendly, just so you know before you jump into a specialization. But this one's going to be one that you're going to really feel the power after you've mastered it. I'm expecting that it will still likely be the best mage specialization, even with the the glacial spike damage that they're doing to Frost. My expectation is that Arcane will likely still be better, and that's due to its excessive amount of mobility, mostly the barrage snare while you're spamming it and moving around as well, and giving yourself a sprint. That mechanic, even though it was nerfed before, is still really good. Arcane, where do we want to put it? I want to put it like A+ or S. I think when you get into double caster lobbies, it can feel a little bit weaker, but if you've got melee and you've mastered this spec, you're just going to absolutely run everybody over in those situations, especially given the fact that they've buffed the armor, and they've increased the stamina, so you're hopefully going to be less likely to be 100 0'd, is making me think that Arcane is probably going to be in a really good spot. It also didn't receive any nerfs, even despite being so strong. Now, Arms Warrior, this is a scary one. Like, this guy, I feel like you're either going to completely flop or you're going to have a really powerful cheese mechanic, and that cheese mechanic is that you can take a talent that makes the damage threshold of fear, I think it's like 100% or 200% higher, and they didn't nerf that like they did with the other root effects. They just left that talent in, and so if fears don't break on top of a baseline damage and you run this talent that makes it so fear doesn't break on damage, you might be able to Stormbolt fear a healer and they're stunned for 10 seconds, and you might be able to destroy them in that window of time. I would imagine at least it's going to be pretty close, and it'd be an uber cheese mechanic. The downside for Warrior is that with armor being reduced, you're going to be losing around about 500 strength because of your Armored to the Teeth talent that gives you strength based on your armor, and I'm wondering if that's an oversight, because I don't feel like Warrior really needed a damage output nerf, at least in the current meta. So that damage output nerf could definitely come back to bite you. Obviously, it's gonna suck that some of these Clothies are a little bit tankier for you. Your damage is gonna go down on those targets. It was already really tough to even stick on most of those targets, like mages in particular, and even some Warlock specializations that know how to use Exhaustion and Soulburn Port can actually be difficult to chase as a Warrior. So I'm thinking Warrior is either going to be like this God Mode cheese spec, or it's just going to fall off really hard. So I'm not sure if I want to put it on B+ or A. I'm going to put it on A for now. But it's easily one that could just fall off or jump up really high. Assassination Rogues, you're going to benefit a bit from the armor buff. Now, obviously, a lot of your damage is bleed, so not as much as other classes. But your auto attack damage is definitely going to benefit a lot from the armor reduction on plate classes. And I would say it's like those melee classes and melee lobbies that are really tough for you at the moment. You didn't receive really any significant changes aside from that. You didn't get nerfed. I actually just queued into Peekaboo in a lobby on Assassination the other day, and it seemed like it had decent burst. Like it's hitting like 400, 500,000 burst. Might be tougher though because HP is going up for that burst to be successful. So it's probably still going to be a struggle. I think survivability is the main problem with this specialization. But I'm actually going to put it a little bit higher. I'm going to be making an Assassination Rogue on reset when they unlock Conquest. So if you'd like to see a journey of someone who's never played the spec yet, at least in Dragonflight, and see how fast we can go from 0 to 2400 with it, my stream is linked in the description down below, and you'll be able to follow that journey to see if I'm just totally talking out of nowhere right with this one. But that's my expectation based on what I've observed from it so far. Balance Druid, your armor nerf is likely going to be felt. I was playing yesterday and I got lobbies into Hunters and they were just absolutely destroying me. I was getting completely melted by this physical damage. So that armor reduction is likely going to be felt on Moonkin quite a lot over any of the other casters because they all got armor buffs. But you do still have bear form. It's likely that the skill cap is going to go up for Boomkin. You're going to need to make sure that you're pre-bearing every single situation because the armor is going to be so low in Moonkin form and not bear form, so you're probably actually going to be weaker. Now you still do have Cyclone, fast clones are still going to be really good, but if classes like Affliction Lock and Shadow Priest with the fear thresholds and the damage buffs that Shadow Priests are getting, and they're more viable and more populated, you are indirectly going to be weaker. Those are classes that are typically difficult to deal with. So I'm actually dropping Balance Druid down a tier from S to A+ because of this. If the meta shifts, which I'm kind of predicting that it will, into these dot classes, you will struggle. I think the armor nerf is going to be felt really badly, just based off my experience yesterday into physical damage dealing classes before it's even been nerfed. So I think Balance Druid is actually going to drop down a tier. And this is coming from somebody who literally puts it on S tier every single time. BM Hunter, I'm expecting this thing to be a god spec. Beast Mastery Hunter with the armor reduction on plate classes. So when you get these plate lobbies, before you are already running casters over with a huge amount of damage. Now the plate class is going to be a lot less tilting. I have to sneeze. Okay, so Beast Mastery Hunter is just going to run people over with the reduction in armor on plate, already with an insanely high damage profile, I think, even despite being squishy. And it's going to be really good into these AFLocks for sure, and Warlocks in general. So I'm expecting it to be strong within the meta that I'm expecting to shift. Blood DK we're not ranking. Brewmaster, a lot of the tanks you can do a lot better than in previous patches with, but they're still really tough to get any sort of rating with overall. Demonology, I'm expecting this to be S tier. I think with the armor buffs coming in, with fear not breaking on damage, it's potentially acting like a pseudo stun, and Demo already having the highest amount of control for every lock spec, it's probably just going to be even more excessive and over the top. Also, your pets benefit from the reduction in armor on plate classes with their auto attack and their physical damage. So that's going to be felt of great benefit against melee attackers. So Demonology definitely going to be a strong one. Destro, very similar case where your armor going up, you're going to be more tanky. Percentage health going up, meaning that your percentage health based heal effects are going to go up as well. Means that it's likely going to be strong. I don't know if I want to put it on an A+ or S. I think it's harder to succeed than Beast Mastery. Is it going to be better than Demo? I really think Demo benefits way more because you double dip. Like you get the armor reduction benefit from your pet damage on plate classes as well as the armor buff, whereas you don't get that as Destro. I guess you're Infernal maybe, but it's so minor. This one's a really tough one for me. I think it's probably safer to put it on A+. I tend to put like everything on S tier and not enough on the lower tier, so maybe we'll drop that down on A+ for right now. Devastation Evoker, I underrate this spec every time way too much. I played into it yesterday, and oh my god, this thing is disgustingly insane. It's just Disintegrate doing like 60% of the damage, and they're just doing 150k DPS. It's actually mind-blowingly strong, even at the highest level. We queued into a lobby that had 2 rogues, a Devastation Evoker, and myself, and I think the Evoker almost went 6 wins in that. I was thinking like, there's no way, like with 2 rogues that an Evoker's gonna win. Everything was dead immediately. It was actually the craziest thing I've ever seen. So Devastation, I underrank this thing really hard. And Solo Shuffle on the ladder, like if it was in a tournament where you're in voice comms, it's probably not that good, but we're not talking that. We're talking the ladder where you're not in voice comms. I'm actually putting this on S. But maybe not. How good is it going to do into dot classes? You're gonna have your landslide sticking more. It's not really a big deal for it. I'm putting it up here, man. This thing is doing disgustingly high amounts of damage. I'm taking a risk with this one. I'm actually putting it that high. Disc Priest, I also think is going to be this high. I already put it that high, and it's getting a buff. You're getting 10% more on your penance and 10% more on your smite, and your atonement durations are going to be buffed. I think by an extra second or two or something like that. Whenever you radiance on top of what it was for your 2-piece bonus, that's a lot of like wiggle room on this class. And against dot classes, it might actually do pretty well to add some extra damage in onto your team, depending on, they're going to be slower games, so you have more time to actually do damage in that type of matchup or that situation. So I think Disc Priest is probably going to be really good. Ellie Shaman, we didn't see any armor reductions for them. They're not really going to benefit from the increase. Rest of Shaman, for some reason, saw armor reduction, but not Ellie, which is a little bit strange. Ellie still got really good overall damage. It could do really well synergized with the Warlock specs that are going to be doing well here. It's got really good kiting when you learn how to use its knockbacks with its Unleashed Shield and its Thunderstorm. You can definitely make a lot of progress once you've mastered that type of stuff. Its damage output is really easy to pull off. I think that it's likely still going to be really good. So where do we want to put this? A+ or S? Probably like somewhere in here. Left to right means I think it's better. And then the worst one is on the right. Enhancement Shaman, you're going to benefit from the armor reductions on plate classes a little bit, but a lot of Shamans are just playing like the Elementalist build where you've got a lot of magic damage with Lava Lash. If you were still playing the Wind Fury build and Doom Winds, it would have been insane, that change. So actually, you're probably going to feel maybe a bit weaker. Your auto attack damage is going to be a bit weaker on cloth targets. You probably do pretty decently though into these dot classes with some of the off healing that you've got, and your durability to dot classes. Typically, Enhance has done pretty good in those metas. Enhance kind of struggles when it's getting clobbered by other bigger plate melee just stacking up on it and bullying it around. So it's possible that Enhance actually does well here. And it does typically do well into Warlocks as well. The fact that you've got Decurse to remove some of those amp curse effects. Enhancement's a really tough one. I'm going to put it here for now. On B+. I think it's better than it has been before, but it's really tough to know exactly where it's going to end up being. Feral Druids, you're seeing a bit of a survivability buff and a couple of buffs to some of your random talents. Now, I don't know if you play Lunar Inspiration in PvP, but if you do, that was a buff on the changes. Feral Druid, your Frenzied Regen is higher, and with percent health going up, it's also going to heal more. Your Renewal is also going to heal more. You still have the fast clones. It's probably still going to... I want to say it's like somewhere here. I think it's got to be better than Enhance. I think having the Mortal Wounds effect is what is going to put it above Enhance. Also, it's going to be really good in these Warlocks. I think into the dot classes that are slower paced. Feral has typically been really good in those types of scenarios. So if it's able to survive, and it's going to be able to cut down some of these plate classes a little bit better. Now, obviously, a lot of its damage is bleed, so you don't really care about armor type. But getting into these plate classes a bit more with your auto attack and your ferocious bites could definitely put you in a better spot offensively and defensively for this patch. Fire Mage, we didn't see any changes. You're still really squished. Well, I guess you got some armor buffs. You'll see that, and the health percentage increase. But I think you're still going to be really squishy. I've actually almost completed the Fire Mage challenge even before the armor buffs. I think I'm like one good shuffle away from getting 2400 on it. So it's definitely possible, but you have to play entirely different than on anything else. You got to play Scared for Your Life the whole time. I think it's probably the weakest spec, but I think it's still functional. I used to put it down here on D. I think with the armor buff, I think it's functional, but it's way more of a struggle than the other specs. Frost Mage, not as much as a struggle as Fire. You're going to see the Glacial Spike buffs. The armor increase is going to help you out against Hunters. I think it's particularly Hunters that you're going to need to be worried about. Let's see. Where do we want to put it, though? Do I think that it's as good as Arcane? Not really. It's got like a very counter vibe where like you get melee lobbies, you do really good. You get like multiple casters, it's not so good. I don't know. It's also getting the benefit of roots not breaking, so I'm wondering how annoying that's going to be for basically anybody when you're getting like shattered and your novas aren't breaking. I kind of feel like it's probably going to fall somewhere here. I think if Aflock ends up being really good, it's going to be so hard to do well. You do well with Aflock into melee, but like against it with other casters, like Ellies and stuff like that, and Destros, I think it's going to be a bit more of a struggle. Frost Death Knight, they actually counteracted the 4% damage buff you were going to get. It's very similar. It's just got counter lobbies. Like you fighting melee DPS, you're going to do really good. You're fighting range, you're not going to do so good. if you can grip targets together. So if it ends up shifting to a Shadow Priest and a Warlock meta, it might be tough to grip people together. I think it's functional, like you can make it work, but it's going to be way more of a struggle, and that's why I'm putting you on the B. It's not below the functional line. Fury Warrior, a little bit of cooldown reduction buffs on this most recent change. I don't think it's still better than Arms or even equal to Arms, but maybe it will be after the strength nerf. I'm wondering if they're going to do anything about that and go back on it. I think Arms is probably going to, or Fury's probably going to feel more like this. Maybe a little bit better than this, but you're still going to get hard kited by Arcane and Hunters. You're going to really feel the effects of the roots probably, although you can run some talents to break root effects more frequently, but you'll probably feel getting kited pretty hard on this patch. You do benefit from the health increase, but you're losing armor, so you're gonna be squishier in those melee lobbies. I think it's probably gonna end up being a little bit above the functional line. Guardian Druid not gonna rank here. Havoc Demon Hunter didn't receive any nerfs, which was really surprising. It's still gonna be about the same, and it does really well in the Warlocks and Shadow Priests, so especially with the Immolation Aura Magic Dispel. Which for some reason is still not nerfed. It's going to be really good into Ellie Shamans, Moonkins, into Shadow Priest, spam removing all of the dots constantly on resets of your Immolate auras, and you're still doing ridiculous damage. So if it ends up shifting at all to some type of wizard meta, you're going to do really good. I kind of want to put you on S at the moment. I think that Havoc Demon Hunter is likely going to be really strong. Holy Priest. Now, you guys were down here before. You're getting huge buffs to like all of your direct heals. I know a lot of people are going to be testing this right away. I want to test it right away as well. It's the only healer that I've done that's been an incredible challenge to be able to get any sort of rating on. I think I've capped out at like around 2,300, and trying to get to the 2,400 point has been just completely brutal. So this increase to your damage and your healing is really high. It's like 20 to 30% on a lot of your abilities. So I'm imagining the worst case scenario is that you're here, but the best case scenario is you're here. This is the hardest spec, I think, to rank. They didn't change your mana regen, is the only thing I'm really taking into consideration, but your healing output is so much better. I'm going to put it in the middle. That way I'm 50-50 wrong no matter what. It's probably more or less going to be here, I think, than up here, but I'll put it here on the A tier for now. Holy Paladin, you're really good into Death Knights. The AoE Dispel Honor talent that you have just dispels all their diseases, and I think it's bugged, honestly. I'm surprised it hasn't been fixed, but it's just really good into Death Knights, particularly. I think the Purge Protection set bonus has been really good for you for protecting your bops in a lot of lobbies. You're going to be really good into Hunter lobbies and Rogue lobbies, and those are probably still going to be prevalent, and you're decent into dot lobbies. You have pretty good healing output overall, especially with no drinking and solo shuffle. I think Holy Paladin is actually going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be really good. You guys are probably like, oh my god, you rank Disc Priest higher than Holy Paladin. Yeah, I'm ranking Disc Priest higher than Holy Paladin. I think the only thing potentially worse for Disc Priest is mana regeneration. So there are some situations where that could be worse, but I think a really well played Disc Priest is really insane in shuffle. I've definitely been enjoying playing mine. Marksmanship Hunter, you're going to feel the nerfs against the mages, but probably not as much as you're going to feel the buffs against the plate. So hopefully it's less of a coin flip when you're joining a lobby as to whether or not you're going to just absolutely destroy it for no reason, or you're going to get completely clobbered. But I still don't think it's going to be remarkable. It'll probably be somewhere here with Frost. It's definitely better than what I would have expected after seeing it yesterday myself firsthand, even before the changes coming through. And maybe you are better because maybe you will cut down any of these warlocks that are coming through. It's possible. So a little bit of a higher end than what I would have normally given it before. Mistweaver, you're actually going to do really well if Shadow Priest and Warlocks are good. I think the Fistweaver build will absolutely dominate in a Shadow Priest Warlock meta. So in those lobbies, if you have Fistweaver build, you're going to do really good. But the Rogue, the Rogue Mage types of lobbies with Boomkins and Crowd Control and Burst, you're probably still going to feel like one of the worst healers in that situation. So I'm thinking you're probably going to be like here as a safe pick, somewhere along with Holy Priest, or maybe even a little bit lower depending on how the meta really unfolds. But I'm really thinking Warlocks are making a comeback here and Shadow Priests are making a comeback. Outlaw Rogue, you're easily still S tier. I don't know how you dodged all the nerfs, bro. You're probably one of the best melee for shuffle. You're just going to do so much damage now in the plate lobbies that were probably where your most difficulty was coming from, and you're still going to cut down the Colothes because you're so durable, especially with the health increases. Crimson Vial is going to scale on that percent healing. I think you're going to be in a really good spot, and honestly, it really just depends on the fear threshold. Like if Warlocks are spam fearing you and you can't connect, then maybe you do fall down a little bit, but Outlaw Rogue not getting touched at all, it makes me think it's going to be in a remarkable position. Preservation Evoker, I actually queued into multiple lobbies of multiple Preservation Evokers. Seems like it's really hectic, especially with the close range, because you got to compromise your positioning a lot. So it's not particularly great. It can be really good into Resto Druids with the Fire Breath Purge. Trying to imagine a Preservation Evoker in like a dot situation and how good it would be. It probably not stupendous. I'm kind of thinking Preservation is probably like a little bit above average maybe, but we'll still struggle with the rogue lobbies that can swap to it, the close range, getting dotted, getting swapped to it. I could see it being difficult, lining up your heals with Dream Breath being harder. I think it's still going to be one of the hardest. Maybe it is the hardest healer now to play with the buffs to Holy Priest for Solo Shuffle. Prot Warrior, we're not talking about it. Prot Paladin, we're talking about it. Resto Shaman. So they didn't buff your healing by 5%. The only thing you're getting Lava Burst buffs, but they also lowered your armor. So I'm kind of expecting a Zug Zug Choo Choo Train run down the blue kind of situation whenever there is a Resto Shaman. I'm thinking it's probably somewhere in here with Mistweaver and Holy Priest. Probably better than Mistweaver. I think it'll be really good if it is a Warlock Shadow Priest meta, with the grounding totems and hiding your healing tides behind pillars and being able to get a lot of passive healing to sustain through dot damage. Could be really good. So definitely, performing well. Resto Druid, I don't think it's really going anywhere. I think it's probably still the best healer, even with the 5% healing nerf. They reduce the mana cost of their spells on top of reducing their mana regen, so that might just like totally counterbalance itself. The 5% is really a slap on the wrist. I was hoping there's going to be more specific tuning to it. It's probably still going to be remarkably strong. And it's going to benefit from roots not breaking on damage as well. When you're in Tree of Life, spamming out those instant roots, higher chance that those roots aren't going to break on dot damage. So if you got Warlock Shadow Priest lobbies, your root and melee, and they can't move around, you're probably going to feel really strong. Ret Paladin is getting some of the biggest damage buffs I've seen of any of the specs so far in this patch, but it struggles into Warlocks. So depending on how heavily Warlocks and these casters are in the meta, you might not be that strong. So this is a really tough one for me. I think it's probably going to end up feeling like A+, though. It's just getting so much damage. Like I find it really hard to believe that it doesn't. And it's really good into the rogues. So with the stamina increase to make everybody a little bit more tankier and maybe not dying all the kidneys, and your toolkit's really good into countering rogues, which are likely going to be popular. It's only really going to struggle if we just see an overwhelming amount of Warlocks and Ellie Shamans and Boomkins and stuff like that come out of the woodworks. It might be a bit more of a struggle, but I think it's going to be really good. And it's possible that it's S. I mean, the damage buffs that it's getting are insane. Shadow Priest is getting some damage buffs as well as the armor increase. And then Fear not breaking on damage is a really big deal. I think there's even talents you can take that make Fear take more damage as well that you could stack on top of that. And you could just turn your Fear into an AoE stun on melee DPS that are training you down possibly. So I think Shadow Priest is likely going to be really good. I don't know if I want to say it's going to be S. I'm going to slap it in here on the A+ for now as like more of a safe option. But I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really good. Subtlety Rogue is still going to be really good. You're going to do a bit better now into the plate lobbies as well, although not all of your damage is physical. They nerfed Eviscerate, but it's probably counterbalanced on plate classes with the armor reduction. You're not going to just automatically just one-shot mages, though. Killing Boomkins will be easier if you catch them out of bearer form, catch them in Boomkin form. That is, I think Subtlety Rogue is still really good in the hands of the best players. Again, it's not beginner-friendly specialization, but in the hands of the best players, I think it's still like really good. I'm still putting it on the S tier for now. Under Outlaw Rogue, though. I think Outlaw Rogue benefited more, and obviously Sub got a little bit of a nerf. Survival Hunter. This is a hard one. A lot of your damage is magic, so the armor buff might apply to some things like Fury of the Eagle or armor reduction on plate. But I feel like you're probably still like in the hands of the best players. You can definitely make it work. You're not worse than Enhancement, are you? I don't think so. We're gonna put you on the left side of this one. Unholy DK, damage nerfs to your burst build. You're probably still going to be really good. The percent health increase means that your death strikes are going to heal more. Your absorb more. But the armor reduction means that things like warriors are going to be a little bit more scary for you that were already difficult. So you may fall off. I'm kind of saying that you might like fall down a little bit. I'm putting you on A+, but not by a lot. Vengeance, we're not going to rank. Windwalker, man, this thing could either be terrible or amazing. You are getting some nerfs to your burst damage, I think, on your blackout kick directly from your set bonuses. But sticking on some of these casters might be really hard, and depending on the threshold, because you were kind of the direct counter to things like Shadow Priest, but now with the armor buff, perhaps you're not. Maybe with the spam Fear on a Windwalker, getting controlled on your Serenity was a problem, and now if dot classes with Fear can control you on your Serenity, you might not be able to connect as much damage. So I'm kind of bringing you down a tier as well. I would have otherwise put you on S, but I think you're probably going to be more like A+. And then Augmentation Evoker, not really a good option, to be honest, to go for. We didn't see any changes for it, particularly here for PvP in this round of updates, and I'm expecting it's probably still going to continue to be a struggle to make this specialization work. But you can see things are starting to like even out a lot. Like I got a lot of people here on the A+, and classes are starting to bubble up, so it's very exciting to see what could possibly happen in terms of the meta moving forward. Again, this is a prediction, and then I will update this as we move forward to see how close I was on this guess. So thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.